It is my absolute and utmost pleasure to introduce Ambika Devi, whom I first met over Facebook from Mind Valley in 2018. She reached out and she said, gotta connect. And so we packed together over video. We talked about the things that we were going to bring and going to do and what we were going to do at Mind Valley. And we had the month together, lots of food, lots of flirting with a special waiter named Igor in Estonia, who had the best salmon anywhere. And Ambika has the best sense of intuition for where the good food is. It's like if I didn't know what I wanted to eat, Ambika knew. If we didn't know where we wanted to go, Ambika knew because, oh, this place is going to have good food. And it was. And I just crave and salivate over this cold beet soup that was just absolutely amazing at this one place. So definitely need to recreate that sometime in our kitchen time. But aside from that, the creative aspect of Ambika just really fed my soul. And she's been one of my strongest encouragers. She's been here at every single writer's lounge and every single state retreat, proving my theory that if you attended each and every one, you'd have a book written. And Ambika has not only one, but has written two books during our time together in the writer's lounges and the state retreats. And Cupid is a Bastard is amazing. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, we'll hold it all up later when we take us on and put us on gallery view. But I just want to turn it over to Ambika now because she is here to share so much of her wisdom and Cupid is a Bastard. Let's see what she's got for us. Ambika.
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction, Rusty. And I want to first thank the Scribners Coven, this amazing group of women writers. We had the most phenomenal morning session this morning. Our energy is buzzing. The muse of everybody is just raining down on us. So I want to ask you a question. How did a kid who couldn't spell end up here? Can you imagine? In ninth grade, I was told I would amount to nothing because I couldn't spell. And that stung. It hurt, but it didn't stop me. And we've got some latecomers buzzing in, but just let the doorbell happen, everyone. So how do you get from not being able to spell to winning book awards to publishing 6 books? Well, I've got 3 tools that I use. They're the most important tools. Number 1, trust my ideas. And Rusty LaHaye, who leads our writers group that's sponsoring today, says to trust your first draft. I want to add to that, augment it with trust all your ideas. The next tool I have for you is have a way to capture them. So many people say to me that are working on creative projects and that I'm coaching to help them expand their stories. I had this great idea, but I didn't get it written down. There's so many ways to do this. For me, the number 1 tool is to have the right journal and pen, because I've got to love my journal and I've got to love my pen. So I buy these by the box, and I sometimes buy these in bulk too. It just turned out to be what works for me, what draws me in. And then if you don't love a physical journal, you can use any device, but make sure you turn it on and use it when you get those ideas. So it's a little bit of pattern response that you have to get into. And then the next is to save them. Save them in any and every form that makes sense to you. We've all got our own filing systems. When I met Rusty, she was telling you how we met in Estonia. And I sat next to her the first morning of the first talk we went to, and I was completely blown away. I watched her organize her journal. She indexed it. She wrote on the side along the edges of the paper what it was. And I thought, I am nothing. I do not know how to organize a journal. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But then within my own system, yeah, sometimes I have to take all my journals off the shelf and go through all of them to figure out what I want or what I'm looking for. Something might come into my awareness of something that I wrote in one of them. over the years. But that process of going through my journals like that revisiting of my words, is incredibly inspirational. We in the Scrivener's Coven, we write from prompts. So what that means is Rusty has an unbelievably huge arsenal of bits that she's taken out of books. And then she'll give us a set of them because people will ask when they're new to the group, well, what if I don't like the prompt? Or what if the prompt's not doing it for me? So we also talk and encourage all of our sisterhood to bend it or go against it or ignore it. It doesn't matter, it's just there. The concept and the birth of my newest book, Cupid is a Bastard, happened in the very beginning of our group meetings. We get together once a month on a Saturday for a lounge, which is just an afternoon of writing. But then quarterly, like this weekend, we get together for the whole weekend. And what comes out of it is so rich, so beautiful. And because I'm in this group, that's encouraged me to weave together even more genres and ideas. I never thought I was going to write a memoir, and a lot of our group members are doing just that. But when I think back to my first book, Lilith, and how my then writing coach, because that was years and years ago, and he was my coach for 10 years and then my first publisher, he said to me, everybody's first book is a memoir. It's about themselves. So let yourself do that. It doesn't matter what you think you're writing about. Tell your own stories. And he used to prompt me with questions. I love solving questions. When I went to art school, which was the first time I went to university, I loved problem solving. It stressed me out more to have to look at a still life and draw it. But if a teacher gave me a puzzle to solve, I loved it. And that's how I approach prompt writing. You may do it in a completely different way, but for me, when something catches my attention, I like to solve why. Why did that do that? Does anybody else feel that way? When you're inspired reading or writing from something? I would think that you are. I can't say that my creative process is like everybody else's. And when I conceived putting together this book, it actually started with a short story. Another thing I love to do is to enter contests. And this was, again, a seed planted by my first publisher. He said, you've got to get your writing creds. I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but this is what worked for me. So when I finished my first book, Lilith, I did take the risk and I entered it in some contests, and it blew me away that it actually came in second place in an international fiction contest. And I'm actually really proud of being second place. I mean, on your first book to win an award. And then when I found out I was placed in a category of spiritual fiction, well, that worked for me, even though I had set out originally to write a self-enrichment book. But again, I was guided. No, you've got to get your writing creds. It's got to be a novel. I was so overwhelmed. I had worked on this for 3 years and then 10 with my coach publisher before it was published. We were talking about the number 13 last night, and it reminded me of how when I set out to write Lilith, it was actually originally called 13, the number of the goddess. And I had so many files on it that I still go back and draw upon. And that went into this book. I had poems and flash fiction and little fragments that had been filed away in my computer and in my journals. And many of them came forward to be a part of this book. I do have a background in visual art, so I decided to use a lot of imagery and icons to let the reader know what was going on and to honor the process that we use. I also used quotes because it's one of my hopes that this book will inspire you as a writer to maybe use one of my quotes or something I offer as a prompt, and it will spark your next book. Writing, revising, editing is a huge part of getting a book from your journal to between two covers or in an ebook. And having a great editor like Rusty LaHaye is priceless. She is such an amazing cheerleader. And so when you're looking for an editor, I suggest you do just that. And there are different types of editors to work with. When I did my previous books, I actually was given 3 editors to work with. One pushing a little bit more of creativity or ideas, another more of a line editor. And so it is very helpful to continually bounce your ideas around and even hire and pay someone to help you with this. I think that's one of the fears a lot of younger, when I say younger, I don't mean in age, I mean new to the idea of creating a book. A lot of people run into a fear of investing in it. And it's worth it. It's worth it to pay to be in groups. It's worth it to pay editors. It's worth it to pay coaches. It's worth it to explore and invest in yourself, just like you would in a workshop or something else that you do for self enrichment. Something I do with my community is I host a crowd watching on the second Thursday of every month. It started off with me offering a once a week happening, but that was too much. So now we're watching a different movie on different topics and we stay and we talk about it. I think over the last 2 years, with the way the world locked down, it's been difficult to feel a sense of community. And so this is a way that I like to give back to everybody. I don't charge for it. If it's a movie I rent it. It's on me. It's a gift. Because the gift to me is spending time with all of you afterwards and hearing your ideas and feeling more of a connection. So in my monthly newsletters, and I do not flood your mailbox, I give you a golden ticket. All you have to do is tap on that or click on it if you're on a computer and register, just like you did for free for today. So what I'd like to do now is to open it up to some Q&A because I'm sure a lot of you have questions about publishing or writing or my creative process, and I would love to answer them now. I'm going to drop information into the chat for you, and please, by all means, sign up on my mailing list so that I can invite you to these movies. The upcoming movie is going to be on the second Thursday, which is the 14th of April, and it's The Connected Universe by Nassim Harriman. And I actually met Nassim when we were in Estonia. An amazing film narrated by Patrick Stewart. It will inspire you, especially if you're writing about the earth and your feelings about healing, or if you're working on a memoir and talking about relationships, because this will really draw you into another place in your consciousness. So I'd love to hear your questions. Rusty, how did you want to handle the Q&A?
I will watch for hands, people waving frantically if they're on the next screen.
Kelly's waving already. Kelly
Okay,
Morgan.
Kelly, go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I would like to know what your book is about.
Ah, excellent question. Thank you. Cupid is a Bastard is about love, and it was sparked by a prompt. Did we identify the prompt? The exact prompt?
We did not.
It's so funny. It was in our first weekend stay treat where I had recently been doing a lot of experimentation with internet dating. And I did get really sparked to someone. Cupid hit me in the heart with an arrow. It burned hot and fast and fizzed out. And there I was at our writers' weekend being prompted, and something just said, Cupid is a bastard. And I wrote that. And then I wrote some more. I wrote a page that I thought, hey, this could be a cool short story. Maybe I'll enter it in a contest. So I eventually finished the short story. Then I thought, well, it's pretty cool, and it goes with some of the poems and other things I've been writing. I always write my dreams down, and I created flash fiction from a lot of my dreams in my dream journal. I keep my dream journal separate from my what I'd call my writing journal, where I write from prompts. Again, my weird little filing system. And then I looked back in my computer. I had written so many love poems that had never been published. I wrote a lot about my mother in the last years of her life, where she still had good cognition, but her body was obviously fading. And then she did die. And I processed a lot of that in here. So there's been a lot of dedication and prompting about mothers, because in the group, other people were writing about their mothers. So I got prompted to write about my family. And then, because I'm an artist, I always design my own book covers. Another reason why I broke away from a publisher and decided to self-publish and create my own label. There's a lot of reasons why: financial reasons, behavior patterns, and having free will to do what I want the way I want. So I actually then hired a designer so I could take some of the stress off. Remember earlier I said it's really important to lift that energy off of you and be willing to pay. That was a tough step. Can you imagine having a degree in fine arts and then hiring somebody to do your art for you? It didn't feel right at first, but then in designing covers, she did my previous book, and she translated it into Spanish in a couple hours. It was a small ebook. But she is unbelievable, and she is now a member of my team and did all the artwork on my new website, ambikadevi.com. So all of this energy, the artwork, working with a new artist, having that ability, I imagine it's like a surgeon who does surgery through a robot because I tell her something or I think something and she produces it in imagery. She's just faster on the computer than I am, and I need that for layout and publishing, for printing.
Okay.
So this
all of
is
that.
a story about your life and love and dating and your
It's
mother.
it, but don't think of it as a story. Think of it
Oh,
as a collage of
oh, I
ideas.
love it. Yeah.
Because in it, what I did was I used flash fiction, and then I made icons so that you knew where you were. If it was a poem, it had the poem. If it's a flash fiction, and then I broke the short story apart and it goes through the book. When I first talked to Rusty about this, I'm sure her brain was spinning of how the heck are you going to pull this off? I said, don't worry, let's just focus on the short story and get that tight. Then we'll figure out where the poems go in between it. And then my artist and I put the magic on it.
I just want to say, Ambika, that it was such fun when you say, okay, we need a poem here. Which one? And I had access to all the poems and we were choosing the poems together. It was such fun to see all the different genres. So it really is a collage of genres, not just one. And if that answers your question, Kelly, Valerie has her hand up.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank
And
you.
after Valerie, if there's not another question right then, I think I would love you to read the prompt that you did for the poem "If My Mother Were a Piece of Furniture," Mary T. McDonald's poem, that poem that you wrote then about your mother.
Okay,
I think that one
sure.
would be beautiful. So let's go to Valerie next.
Okay, so I know the stay treat is 2 years old, and I'm just wondering when I don't, maybe I know, but I don't remember when you started this particular Cupid is a Bastard, and how many hours did you dedicate to putting it together and maybe not editing it, but putting all your pieces together in one file, and then deciding on how many pages. So there's three questions there.
Okay, so the first one, please.
um, how, like, I know State Street's 2 years old, but when did you decide to do this book? Was it in 1 year, 2 years? Like,
Oh, okay, I think I understand.
mhm.
I didn't conceptualize the finished piece. All I did was think to myself, this is a cool idea for a short story. I wrote a single page, which then edited to become the beginning paragraphs of the short story part of the book. It wasn't until this year, earlier this year, earlier in 2021, that I started to understand how it went together. I have to say, most of my books are their conception is in what I would call articles. Those articles become chapters. But this is not a front to back read. This is like People magazine. It's like a toilet book. You can open it up anywhere. I have a friend, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I have a friend who got it right away. She actually got the first copy when it went live online to purchase. And she wrote a review, and she popped something on social media that said, I love that I can pick it up, open it anywhere, and just read. So, it's like that. Can you read it front to back? Absolutely. I hope you do, because I want you to start with the dedication and then read my author's notes as to, what the heck is going on here, which sometimes I can recall and sometimes I can't. What was the next question?
So how did you decide on how many pages?
I didn't.
And
I didn't. That is never an idea. Pages are determined after you go through editing and then into layout, because there are extra pages that are used in a book. There is a minimum if you want to have a readable spine on a book. And then as far as coaching, things like that, I'm more than happy to welcome people privately to talk about design, because design is a whole different ball of wax to editing. And then being bold to treat your finished product like you're actually opening up my journal and looking at my drawings and my doodles and my Zentangles and looking through my photo albums, which I do a lot. I remember one of the things I wrote that went in here was from a prompt that sent me looking for a photo album. I went and sat on the floor and went through the photo album. I came across something completely different and ended up writing from that prompt to the photographs and the memories. I had no idea where I was going with this. So trust. Remember I said trust earlier? Rusty says trust. Trust is so important. And this is the number one thing when I'm counseling people as an astrologer or a psychic. Yep, I work on a psychic hotline. And so does my friend Jennifer, who I just recently brought into it. I've done thousands of readings there since 2019. And the number one thing I hear coming out of my mouth is trust and communication. Building trust through communication as a cornerstone, foundational relationship necessity. And this is important for you as a writer. I want you to feel comfortable to just write. And I'm seeing that in everyone in our writing group as we have built strength. In the beginning, Rusty, we didn't have it like we did today, in the morning today.
No,
We had it to a degree, but today we were on fire. We were galactic. We were intergalactic. We were cosmic today.
we were.
And the way we hit off each other. I think about when I was in art school and how my professors would gather us for what almost felt like social events, slideshows, little films, talks that had nothing to do with being in the studio making, doing, creating. I think about times where people, famous artists, would hang out at cafes in Paris, drinking wine or absinthe and talking about each other's genres. And they had writers, painters, sculptors, musicians, poets, bards. We
Mm-hmm.
must create these groups. We
Yes,
must be in these groups.
we
And
do.
that's what we're doing. That's what Rusty and I are doing in our ways and together.
Mm-hmm. And we have some questions that came to me in the chat before we go to Jennifer. Susan's been waiting. And one question I don't want to forget is then everyone probably wants to know, what is the minimum number of pages to have the spine? Because you said that's the one thing that's, that's important about page numbers. You don't decide your page numbers ahead of time, but to have a spine, how many?
I believe to get the thinnest spine, to not be what's called a chat book. A chat book is how poets publish quite often. They don't care about imagery. When I did a poetry book with a famous poet, Dominic Albanese, my book, The Wizard and the Wrench, is poetry of both mine and his. And I said, Dominic, I'm going to make this a book with a spine. He gasped. And I said, I'm going to put photography and artwork in it. He almost didn't want to talk to me. And I said, no, no, no. You've got all these chat books. Chat books only have staples for spines. Mm-hmm. They're just words on pages, definitely in the formatting that the poet wants, but sometimes just line, mm-hmm. all left alignment.
Where that word comes from, Ambika's chaps who went from village to village to village in England performing their poetry. And when people first became literate, they wanted to have a copy of the poems so that they could enjoy them after the chap went to the next village. So chapbooks. And at that point, they were hand sewn. And I have a street poet that I had come as a guest poet to the Stroll of Poets Festival in Edmonton that was like, twice the height of me. I stood on a chair to give him a hug. But he chap as in chap. P, Papa at the end, chap. And he would still hand sew and hand bind his chapbooks, not with staples, and hand print them. And he was awesome. So that's where that came from.
Why
so
not sew them?
Book, how many pages? I don't think you quite said how many.
Okay. I believe 128. It depends on the size. What are you talking size? But I would go for a little over 130. Now remember, a word processor page, I do standard 6x9 paperbacks. Standard is good. I do cream colored paper. I do the highest quality paper. I do always glossy covers. They're getting better. The quality is getting better over time. It's a film that's over the cover. This is my style. And I want my books, when I see them all side by side, faces on the shelf, to me, that they make sense together. Mm-hmm. If you're designing a book, this is what I did the very first time with Lilith. I went to a local bookstore. I found somebody who looked bored that worked there. I said, I'm working on a book cover. Would you like to chat with me for a few minutes? And he said, sure. He was just delighted. And I said, well, it's going to be fiction. And I gave him some description about the book. Can you show me some books from that kind of genre that come to mind? And we set them all up facing me on a shelf. I stood back about 12 feet. And I just looked at the colors, the font, the shapes of the images. I thought to myself and talked to myself and him, what do you like? What do you don't like? What should I stay away from? What I learned from him is how to create spacing on your cover. This one actually breaks the rule because if stickers are placed on your book for discounts or sales or for whatever, it might cover up things on the cover you don't want. Being able to read the spine when the book is facing you this way and you turn it on its back, the spine should be right side up. I've seen people make mistakes and have it the other way. Mm-hmm. The back of the book should have a space for the barcode, but I used to do QRs. I don't do them anymore. Yeah. So 132, question. I would say, is a good thing to shoot for, but go bigger if you can.
Okay, let's font size will question, Ambika. Let's go to Susan's question. Susan, can you unmute?
Thank you, Rusty. Thanks for the invitation. And thank you, Ambika. I have a really unusual situation, and I'm really new to this. You're right. My first book was a memoir. I did not publish it for whatever reasons. And the 13, this book that I'm working on now, it's 13 years. So yeah. So I have an animated movie musical. That's what I have. I have an animated movie musical. I have the screenplay done. I have the songs done. I'm not an illustrator. And I see it sort of like the Wizard of Oz path, where it came out as a book that becomes beloved and then it becomes a movie kind of thing. So my question for you is, with that dump of information, what who what skill sets would I need to appeal to for help? I mean, who could I turn to take the next steps?
I would go to people that work in theater. I would go to people who work in opera.
I will
I
add
would
to
go
that.
to colleges and universities and
Yes.
talk to professors and students to take
Yes,
on the
Ambika,
project.
I want to add to that in that most cities where you are, Susan, I'm not sure where you are, but most cities and art centers and theaters here in Edmonton at the Citadel Theater, we have an artist in residence who looks at people's screenplays, who looks at people's, scene treatments. And then the universities, what Ambika said, they'll have a writer in residence. They'll have a professor that you can, make an appointment to go see. They're really quite friendly to us novices and
I
doing
actually have a
well.
contact for you, so make sure
Oh,
you connect with me because
great.
one of my mentees, who I taught as a writer when she was 11 years old, is now the chair of a film department at a university.
Yay.
So, another thing that I am very passionate about is weaving together all of my networks, which is happening here. It's amazing who's here because this is from many different places who showed up today. Did that help you, Susan?
Yeah, that definitely helped. I was actually thinking of going that way because I saw the movie about Jonathan Larson's work with Rent and how it evolved, and he workshopped it. And I was just saying to my husband this week, because I have a musical theater background from high school, and I was saying to my husband this week, I should look around and find local artists and let them workshop it.
And how
And
you can find that, Susan, is go to your local Writers Guild. And
Writers
like
Guild.
here we have a provincial Writers Guild, so you probably have a state one. And there's also a national Writers Guild. And you can ask them, is there any writers groups for screenwriters and that? So you can workshop it with others who know your side, know your style of writing. And then if there isn't, say, can I start one? And they will advertise you for free. Are there other screenwriters or people interested in screenwriting that want to be in a workshop group? And then ideas about how you organize a workshop group is so that, because it only takes one negative person to really kill and stifle the creativity there. So you want to have some basic rules of respect when you start that. If there isn't one already and you're starting one, you want to say that we're starting out with friendly feedback, and two things that you want are what you want more of and what really resonated with you, because that will help all the chafe fall away. That will keep it positive. That will keep people coming back so that your group can grow and grow and grow like ours has here.
That's
So
fabulous.
yeah,
Thank you. That because that's something I'm
And
afraid of.
and just
I'm timid
friends,
about
you
going
know,
into groups because of
coffee
that.
coffee talks, tea times,
mm-hmm.
Zoom gatherings. Stay connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And my last question, thank you so much. That's really, really super helpful. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask, since we're talking about astrology, what is your sun, moon, and ascendant? If you
My
don't
son,
mind, you can decline.
no, I'm fine with it. I'm a professional astrologer. My sun sign is Scorpio. I'm speaking tropical. You want me to speak tropical or
Yes.
Jyotisha? Okay.
Yeah.
Tropically speaking, which is a time measurement. My sun is eighth house Scorpio. My moon is seventh house Virgo.
I knew
And
that.
my ascendant is almost Pisces, very late degree Aquarius.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
So it's out of square. It's not square. It's actually out of sign trine to my sun.
Right. Oh, cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm an Aquarius, so there you
Mhm.
go.
All right. Thank you so
All right.
much,
Thanks so
Susan.
much.
Let's go to the
Jennifer's
next
got a
exhibition.
question.
Yep.
Wow, such juiciness. I have many questions, but I'll ask one main question, Ambika. With the books that you've written, this being your most recent, how has, if you could just say in a snapshot, as best you can, the process from the first book to all the books to this
Ooh.
present book? Because this present book is very unique in the conglomeration of how it's come together. So I'm curious how that's all revealed for you.
I can definitely say, Jennifer, that this new book, Cupid is a Bastard, is the most free I have ever been in the creative process with a book. When I wrote Lilith, it was to prompt challenges. And I wrote what I thought was the manuscript. And I used to go to my coach once a week. I did this for years. He was a restaurateur, so I would go late morning. I'd hang out in his office, and then he'd cook me lunch. It was easy to show up. And one day I showed up and he said, "Now write the beginning." And I was really glad I was leaning back in the sofa. And I ended up running 3 more chapters to the beginning of the book. It's my freshman out of the gate thing. Unfolding Happiness, I was requested to help a former chief of surgery turned Ayurvedic doctor write his first book. I still had a publishing deal. I had a 3-book publishing deal that I broke during that second book, Unfolding Happiness, because of actually the publisher said, this guy can't write, which is, publishers can be harsh. And when people come to me saying things like, I want an agent, I want a publisher, my first and only word in response with a huge question mark is why? Seriously, why? That's a whole different seminar. We could even have a day about why I did that. He wasn't a writer, but he was brilliant. He was a presenter. He still is. Super kind, loving human being. And I could not get him to sit down and write like we do. But he loved to walk and talk. So what did I do? He's a great cook too. I think it's really important to hang out with other people that cook when you want to really do a project. Especially if it's healthy food. And he had a completely opposite schedule to mine, so I had to morph and modify. We would go out on morning walks. I had a cell phone that I could thumb type in back in the day when they were that format. And we would walk and talk, and I wrote that dang book, his part of the book, going on these morning walks over the course of 2 weeks. So every day, I just did it that way. Wizard in the Ranch was easy. I had a set of 30 poems that I felt were good enough to put in a book. Dominic has thousands of poems, but Dominic wasn't electronically savvy. So what did he do? A friend of his printed out almost 3,000 poems. Some of them were duplicate in the box. It was heavy. I took the box and my laptop and my 30 poems on a lovely getaway to Savannah, Georgia. And the first couple days it rained a lot, so I couldn't go out walking, and I sorted the poems into maybes and definitely nots and duplicates. And then I whittled it down to 30 of his poems. So that's 60 poems with artwork. That's all that book took to have a spine. Okay, we just pushed it until we had enough space for a spine. And then the ebook was a foreword for one of those compilation books. Don't start me on that today. I don't recommend it. Anthologies, yes. Compilations, no thank you.
No, the different.
But when I signed up to do that, I did not pay to be in that book. And I wrote very clearly a written signed agreement that the intellectual property was mine to do whatever I wanted with whenever I wanted. So I created that in a really pretty ebook with color photos. And I might make it a little hard copy kind of tabletop enjoyable book. And then I translated it into Spanish. And then this book. So this whole kind of scrapbooking pieces and stuff together has just kind of become my style over
Mhm.
time.
Ambika, we have a question from Brenda, and just a really quick one. What about recording the guy and having it translated by a listener on a laptop? The guy that couldn't write but could present. Well, that's great because we've talked
Well,
about
yeah, I could do that now,
AI.
but back then I
That's
couldn't.
right.
That wasn't available back then.
Yeah.
Voice texting wasn't available back
No,
then.
it wasn't. But now
But
we've
the
got it.
tools that I recommend now, which if you're a scrivener, you know, are Otter AI. If you're one of my private clients, you've already been savvy to that, and Evernote. Any which way. But I also would send myself emails. That's how I did it. I wrote myself emails, hit send with that second book. So
Mhm.
I use all these techniques now. Yesterday, I was driving home from buying food because before these weekends, I stock up on Fridays and get as much stuff prepped so that I'm taken care of because I don't have somebody feeding me. I have to do it. So prepping for a weekend like this is super important and making sure you've got things clean and washed and ready to eat and snacks like fruit on your desk
Mhm.
and plenty of water.
Right. So let's go to
But
Brenda's
I was
question.
driving home and I ordered something and I thought, where is this going? And it ended up in a short story I am working on
Mm.
today. But
Yeah, it was
yesterday
great.
when I dictated it, I have no clue where it was going. And the next question?
Brenda. And Brenda, if you can come off mute and on camera.
I'm just curious because, with all the stuff that I wrote, I always think, well, what next? What next? And can you just break it? Okay, it's a two-part question, I guess, because with traditional publishing, is it different than when you self-publish?
Oh,
And
yes.
what's the process for both? Like why did you choose self-publishing? You said financial and a couple other things, but
Uh,
but what's the process? I'm curious. Thank you.
Artistic freedom for sure was number one. And so when you go to a traditional publisher, first of all, let's look at the different ways that people are getting published by the big houses. They are doing what's called hybrid publishing, which back in the day was called co-publishing, meaning you pay the publisher several $1,000s. I don't know what the different companies like Hewlett.
Like what Hay House does.
Hay House, yeah. Well, that yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're paying, and then they give you an editor, and they do the layout, and you get the cover, and you probably get a box of books, or maybe not. Some of them maybe will only give you three or four, and
Hmm.
you can buy your books wholesale, and then all of your advertising, everything's on you. You don't get sent on book tour. It doesn't happen. I did a book tour for my first book. I went back to where I lived and I had a lot of clients. And because I saw astrology clients, I came out even on the book tour. The book sales did not break me even. They helped,
Hmm.
but yeah. So with your content, Brenda, you have more than enough. You have more than enough right now. Somebody needs to be muted. Um, Thank you. With your content, Brenda, you have more than enough for a book right now. Imagine it kind of like if you don't have a copy of just so you know, also everybody, the hard copy, the paperback of my book has much more artwork than what we were able to do in the ebook. Ebooks are tricky because you have to remember people can expand and contract the
Hmm.
font.
Hmm.
So your layout is not going to turn out the way. So I had to do this first. Most people will do an ebook first. I suggest trying out your material with an ebook. See if you get picked up, if you want to try that route.
Mhm.
And then, because I've got plenty of friends and associates who do an ebook, they even do a paperback, and then they get picked up later, and the whole thing gets reconstructed, rewritten, re-edited, refurbished, and redone. So, for me as an artist, it's when I went to art school, I learned that it's not about the finished project. It's not this product. It's the journey. We talk about this in life, but how often do we own that it really is the journey? We get our hopes up. We think this is going to make me, a guest on Oprah, and this is going to get me in the pages of magazines. And you know what? This is a slightly more expensive business card.
Mm.
So work on your public speaking. Work on the other things that you do. Brilliant entrepreneurs will tell you have multiple streams of income.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Let it be a stream of income, but please don't put all your eggs in that basket right away.
Mm-hmm.
And let it be an expression. You have so much beautiful content, Brenda.
Thank you.
And with photographs, can you imagine how that book will come alive with artwork,
Yeah.
with mementos? That's how I would do it.
Yeah.
But it's your book. I don't know. I'd be happy to sit down with you and talk about it.
We might have to do that. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't like my ideas, I'm okay with it.
Good.
Ambika, I think that's a perfect place to end on, and the beautiful note of Brenda's content. And
Did you want me to read this poem?
I do want you to read that poem, and then I'm actually going to offer all of our guests 2 prompts before we have them, before we take our lunch break, and they can go away with some prompts to think about. So, Ambika, yes, please read that poem that we can.
And what do you have the prompt? It was just if my mother, I think.
Yeah.
If my mother was an object. I think that was the prompt, wasn't it?
No. I will find the Cupid prompt and we'll share that with everyone.
Oh, no, not the Cupid prompt. I thought you wanted me to read this poem.
No, I
about
do
my
want
mom.
you to read that one.
My mama.
Yes.
Okay. I'm talking about the prompt for this. I think the prompt for this
If
was my
was a
first
piece of
line.
furniture. Yeah.
Oh, a piece of furniture. Okay.
Yeah.
So I took the prompt and I bent it and I made it if my mother was an object. Because my mother was an antique dealer. And so objects and things of beauty were huge to her. And this prompt, if my mother was a piece of furniture, sent me on this journey. If my mother was an object, she would be a quilt created from earthy patches, some saved and recycled, others salvaged from ends of fabric used to make clothing. Step-by-step patterns sewn together, geometric illusions. Shadow boxes wrapping me in love, soothing me when I've lost my way in the dark. If my mother was a piece of jewelry, she would be a strand of beads, pearls, worn on light blue denim chambray, her vetiver scent clinging to them, crisp and sharp like fresh cut grass. If my mother was a place, she would be the beach, gentle waves and curling tessellations, beautiful ebbing and flowing in the breath she gave me. If my mother was a dish of food, she would be a bowl of glistening bow tie noodles, simply satisfying, coated with butter, salt, and fresh cracked black pepper. If my mother was a song, she would be, hey, good looking. I am amazed by her beauty and the smile on my face, identical to hers. If my mother was a pair of shoes, she would be a pair of blingy flip-flops, easy to slide into, relaxed, yet stylish. If my mother was a destination, she would be a gourmet cafe on the left bank of Paris, a cozy little nook, serving half croque-monsieur sandwiches, grilled to perfection, a cup of soup on the side. If my mother was a piece of furniture, she would be an early American armoire, beige, barn red, and periwinkle blue, with a different key that somehow works. If my mother was a shape, she would be a heart, a sparkling jewel nestled in its center inside of that a flame ever burning in memory.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so very much, Ambika. Big hand for Ambika. And
Could
let's put you
everybody
all in
hold up their
memory.
Cupid for me, please?
Yes, yes, yes.
And show me how happy you are that you got to be here today.
Mm-hmm. Those of
Thank
you
you.
who are off camera, that would be great if you could come back on camera just for a moment. There
I
we
think a
go.
few of them. I love to see all the Cupids. I can't wait to be with you so I can sign them.
Oh, awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right. Love it, everyone. Thank you so very much. And I'll just give you a couple of prompts so that our group that's here today will go off and write and have their lunch break. We'll come back, together then. But before you all part, the prompts that I have for you, I'm going to put in the chat, are Louis L'Amour. When you go to a country, you must learn how to say two things: how to ask for food and to tell a woman that you love her. Of these, the second is more important, for if you tell a woman you love her, she will certainly feed you. I know, it makes me laugh too. And then the universe operates through dynamic exchange. Giving and receiving are different aspects of the flow of energy in the universe. And in our willingness to give that which we seek, we keep the abundance of the universe circulating in our lives. Deepak Chopra. So thank you all for showing up today. If you showed up for just Ambika's session, I'm really super glad to have you here. Bid you all farewell.